At age 2, she had no speech and many signs of severe autism. Fortunately, her mother defied the advice of doctors and kept her out of an institution. Temple Grandin is now an industry leader in animal science, a professor at Colorado State University, and is a well-known author and prominent advocate for the rights of autistic persons and of animal welfare. Temple Grandin, welcome to Evening Edition.
It's good to be here.
Now, today, of course, we recognize a wide spectrum of autism disorders. But back in 1949, what was it like when you were diagnosed?
Well, fortunately, there was one doctor that referred my mother to a very good speech therapy class that a teacher taught out of the basement of her house. And I got a lot of the same therapy that's gotten today. Then my mother hired a nanny when I was 3. And we played constant turn-taking games. Got to teach these kids how to take turns. Now, autism is a big spectrum. You also can have kind of the geeky, nerdy, socially awkward kids that there's no speech delay. And then you can get very, very severe autism, where you do the early intervention and you're not able to pull them out of it. It's a very, very big spectrum.
If you were diagnosed today, where do you think you would be on that spectrum?
Well, it would be the same because I had speech delay.
Sure.
It would be the same. You know, now autism diagnosis is just a great big spectrum. I want to emphasize, autism diagnosis is a behavioral profile. It is not precise. Half of Silicon Valley's got autism. You've got people with mild autism that keep this TV station running. You see, I think
our TV station.
Any TV station, for that matter. You see, I think a brain can be made more thinking, or a brain can be made more social. I mean, Silicon Valley, you know, you've got your geeks and nerds up there.
No, you were, yes, we do. You were talking about that at age 4, you still didn't have speech.
By 4, I was talking.
You were learning because of these speech intervention. And you were a big advocate of early intervention for speech. And
Absolutely.
Why is that?
Well, all the research shows very clearly they've got little kids that are not talking. The worst thing you can do is nothing. Doesn't matter what their diagnosis is. You got little kids that are not talking, they're sitting in the corner, they're not interacting with people. You got to work with those kids. Turn-taking games, you know, teach them words, got to work with them.
You mentioned the word stretch earlier when we were speaking. You believe that that some kids on the spectrum disorder should be stretched, kind of stretch the limits. But wouldn't that stress certain children out?
No, well, you've got to have an instinct on how to stretch. I see too many 10-year-olds that are completely verbal. They're holding on to their parents, and the parents are doing all the talking for them. The kid hasn't learned to talk to people. You got to stretch them just outside the comfort zone. I was at a fancy dinner recently, and this little boy was eating with his hands, and I just said to him, use the utensils, and he did. You see, now that's an example of stretching. Sometimes there's not enough expectations. Now there are sensory issues. There are some individuals where a noisy supermarket, they're just not going to be able to tolerate it.
Let's move on to why you're here tonight. You're going to be speaking at the University of San Diego about inclusion in schools for children with disabilities. How do you think schools here could improve learning for kids on the autism spectrum?
The kids that get different labels, I don't really care what the labels are, often have uneven skills. Good at one thing, bad at something else. We got to build up the strength. My strength when I was in 3rd and 4th grade was in art. And my art ability was always encouraged. Another little kid, it might be mathematics. If that 3rd grader can do a college math book, let him do it. But he's going to need tutoring and reading. That tends to be the pattern. We've got to start thinking about outcomes. They also have got to learn work skills.
And this brings me to Common Core, which of course has started the curriculum here in San Diego. It actually does not do standardized testing anymore. Do you think that's good for kids with disabilities, learning disabilities?
Well, everyone's got their own idea of how they're doing Common Core. Well, for 20 years of my career, in the 80s and the 90s, I was doing design work, I was supervising the construction of my projects in major meatpacking plants and feed yards, and I've realized how much construction affects how I think. See, when you build something and design something, it's all about the outcome. You got to get the job done. What's the ultimate outcome of education? Stay out of trouble with the law, get and keep decent jobs, get into careers you like, raise a family, contribute to society. If the kid ends up playing video games on Social Security, that's a horrible outcome. And unfortunately, I'm seeing too many of them doing that because as teenagers, they never learned any working skills. We need to be finding paper route substitutes.
Now, I know that you've written a number of books on autism, including The Autistic Brain. And from your personal experience in living with autism, what do you think is the most important thing for people who do not have autism to understand about people who do have it?
Well, if working on the milder end of the spectrum, do not be vague. Let's say it's a work situation. Let's say it's a retail job in a store, and the person is going up and getting too aggressive with the customers. and getting the customers upset. Well, you can't just say you're too aggressive with customers. You've got to be much clearer and say, we'll only approach a customer twice and then back off. Maybe watch Susie, how she approaches a customer. You've got to give very clear instructions. It's like training somebody on how to behave in a foreign land. I was in China in June, and I learned in China I got to point like this, and if I point the way we point, that's rude pointing. Now, if somebody didn't tell me that, I wouldn't know that. You've got to teach it just like that.
Boy, we could just talk to you forever about this. Temple Grandin, I thank you so much for joining us.
It was good to be here.